Now, in this lesson on rocks, we want to focus on three things. Rocks can be very complicated, especially when you look at a stream of rocks, or in this case, a kind of a small hillside. It's actually a stream also. You see the water down here. So many rocks, we get caught up in drawing and copying what we see, but we want to focus on three things. First is simplifying and composing. So I want to simplify the rocks, which means pulling them together into larger clumps, eliminating some rocks, and just creating a pattern or composing them to make a better painting. The second thing is make them look heavy, solid. I want to draw them or paint them in such a way that they have weight to them because they are rocks. Third thing is suggesting the light, the type of light that's on them. So those three things, simplifying, making them look heavy and solid, and then suggesting the light. When I look at this scene, the first thing I want to do is simplify. So I want to see these rocks a little more solid. One thing I always want to do when I'm painting them is I want to get more angled lines. So as the form changes in the rock, not always, because there are some rounded rocks, but they can really look like marshmallows when I get them too rounded. So I tend to create, and these are fairly angular rocks anyway. I've got a large rock here which can stand by itself. Here I can pull together two or three rocks into a solid shape and maybe have a line there to suggest two. Same thing in here. In other words, I'm not tied to the exact shape that's there. This rock and that rock will look too much the same. So if I make this one a little longer, that one a little more rounded or squared off rounded. Same thing in here. I'm pulling these rocks together into a shape and just a line there to separate them. So the more, and like this bunch of rocks here is fairly obvious. They group together. But it's where you look at this type of thing, and I might take 5 or 6 rocks and turn them into 3. In other words, I'm simplifying them. I also, the in-between value and color of the rocks are these reddish orange leaves. So I know I have that, so I can take that reddish orange of the leaves and eliminate. So when I'm painting, this is my background value and color, the reddish orange leaves. And it's a lot easier to simplify. So I can create a pattern now of rock and background color, which is the orange leaves, and eliminate the rocks I don't want. So I got a simpler pattern. They're more angular, which I think goes a long way to make them look heavier, and also to make them look more solid. What I want to do, along with those angular lines, which makes things look more heavy, I want to get a more definite 3 values. So I look at this rock, it's fairly flat in the photograph, but I'm going to have a dark side in there. A little bit of a dark side in here. There's a definite one there. So the minute I create at least 2 values, in this case 2 values in the shadow, the minute I do that and simplify that shape, right away they look more three-dimensional. These rocks don't until I get a dark underneath of them, or a dark on the side, or whichever way is facing away from the light or indirect light. So all these areas I want to find a shadow pattern in there, and that leaves the lighter, and in this case I can come back with the little bit of sunlight that's hitting the rock. So in this rock right here there's a bit of sunlight. This is mostly in shadow, but there's a bit of sunlight here which I might want to increase that light. Same thing, I see some in here. I might want to, I know there's a streak of light coming through here, and it might catch all of these rocks a little bit, especially back in here. So now I've got the 3 values, a dark, kind of a half tone, or in this case a lighter dark, and a light. The rocks are mostly in shadow. On some of these images they're going to be mostly in light, so you're going to have a light and half tone, and then you'll find your dark. Here it's mostly dark, so I have a darker dark, lighter dark, then I'm finding my light. But it's always 3 values. Simplify that to 3 values. I mean, I could come up with a 4th here with a dark accent, which is somewhat what I kind of drew with in there. But that's that dark in between the rocks or down underneath the rocks where there's no light whatsoever, no reflected light, no anything. So I'm reducing that again to 3 values, maybe 4 with the dark accent, simplifying the shapes, getting rid of what I don't want, and creating kind of a pattern, pulling some of the rocks together to create a pattern of rocks or shapes. And just like anything else, the photograph is just a starting place, so don't hesitate to eliminate a lot of stuff. Same thing with this. The larger rocks interest me. So this rock, this shape of rocks in here kind of creates a pattern. I like those. And the rest of these I might eliminate. I mean, there's a lot of different ways of doing it, but I'm trying to think through what I want to eliminate and what I want to leave. And again, I would make these rocks more angular, find the 3 simple values, make sure they look solid and heavy. Same thing here, I got a lot of shadow, but within the shadow here on the left side, I still have 1, 2, 3 values with that highlight on there. When I look at this rock over here, I've got a value there, value on that side, and I want to force those 3 values in there. And that'd probably be 4 because I see too many angles there. Same thing here is a definite value here, then the highlights on top. Then there's a value on this side and a value on that side. That's how you have to paint the rocks, otherwise they're not going to look three-dimensional. So when I see this, I want to start with an overall value, which is this lighter dark, then the highlights, and then the dark accents in there. And that gives me my 3 values. Now I can have a few more. I can have 4 values or maybe 5, but then it starts to get too busy. So keep your values to 3, maybe 4. If it's a really large rock with a lot of form in it, you could squeeze some more highlights and darker accents, but keep those real simple. Now this view is a little more pulled back, so the rocks are smaller, but again I have shapes here. This is my main rock here, maybe one here, and I might take these 4, 5, 6 rocks, create another large one. I do want to vary the size, so I have to be careful not to get too many of the same size. And maybe open it up here. Make that creek or water, and I have kind of just a shelf of rock there. And same thing in here, 1, 2, and pull together a few to create a bigger one. But then have the negative shape of either grass, leaves, water in there. So all that to create a pattern of rock that works better in the composition. Here the rocks are a smaller part of the composition, but still very important. And I want to create those 3 values. So I have the lighter dark, darker dark, and a little lighter there. And I don't have to do all the little things I see in there. Like when I see this light area here, I can make just one light shape. Don't feel that you have to copy everything you see. There's a crack there, there's an indent there. That's detail. It works better if I can just find that shape of light and put it in with thick paint and a strong color. Just suggest the light. The more detail I use to break that up, the less interesting it's going to look. It's going to kind of fall apart. Focus on those 3 things: simplifying, finding the simple pattern of shapes, eliminating some rocks, making sure they look heavy by having at least 3 values, and then suggesting light.